Naked and Afraid in the Kitchen was
That's what I'm
Sebastian Tequila's.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. You don't remember Naked and Afraid in the Kitchen?
I don't think he was here
with his gun. We had to hide his gun. All kinds of crazy shit.
Christmas special.
125. Episode 1. What?
Episode
15?
100. Pulling the Thread
Why
podcast.
are you showing me 10?
We are back on. What's up with my volume?
I don't know. I don't have anything either.
This?
I can't even hear it.
Can you hear it now?
I can hear it. It's way loud now.
That's how I should be in you.
No.
When
That's
I'm in your head,
loud.
it should be loud.
It always is, but it's usually in the middle of the night when I wake up.
It should be so loud that you hear me when I'm not present.
I think I do sometimes, Lord Palpatine.
Do you drink it? Do you dream about me?
That's what I said. Usually when I wake up screaming.
Only when you're dreaming, or
when I'm dreaming.
What about only if you've been drinking? Is it?
No, not when I've been drinking. So I don't associate. Here's the weird thing.
Is there anybody around when you wake up when you've been dreaming about me?
No.
Is John in the room now?
Am I in the room now? Is Limu with you often?
Well, I mean, are we doing? Is any of this real? I don't even. Here's the weird thing about time frame, right? About time frame.
Well, I can move through time.
Is the entire time I knew you in California, you were a staunch anti-drinker. And so when I think of you now, I still think of you as an anti-drinker, even though you have the world's largest tequila bar on the face of the planet.
That's true.
Here
actually.
on the compound.
I actually do have the world's largest.
I know you
tequila
do.
bar.
I know you do. It took you. It's probably the second largest. I bet you are still recovering. I'll bet the tequila bar upstairs is still recovering from the great Sebastian debacle.
The motherfucker broke open a $5,000 bottle of tequila.
What year was that?
When did it happen?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Years ago.
People
almost died from it.
I'm sure you're still recovering. I'll bet that. Well,
that little motherfucker probably poured out 11, 12 grand worth of tequila that night.
Naked and Afraid in the Kitchen was
That's what I'm talking
Sebastian
about.
Tequila's.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. You don't remember Naked and Afraid in the Kitchen?
I don't think he was here
with his gun. We had to hide his gun. All kinds of crazy shit.
Who was naked?
Some
Many people have been.
party goer that decided he was going to get naked and afraid.
So
in
do
the
you
kitchen.
remember, were you here? I was talking to a few people. I think it was like Friday night, or maybe it was Saturday, at an SRF, a few SRFs ago. Remember I had a couple dudes and I took them into my office?
Yes.
And you remember there was that other dude, and I thought he was just with those guys? I thought he was with the band. Remember Sam?
Yes.
Sam, what's his name? Sam?
I don't know his last name.
I can't remember the name of him.
I know who you're talking about.
The bus guy.
Yeah.
He's got the bus and everything. So that whole crew was sitting there, and there was another dude with them. And I thought that other dude was their friend. Well, they thought that was my friend. And this dude was just like with us the whole time somehow. And when I took him in my office, showed him all the private collection and everything, we came downstairs, and this guy just continued to get drunker and drunker. And it was so late, everybody was out but us, but the cats were out. And he's fucking with this cat, and he keeps like rolling the cat's tail. He's like just petting the cat's tail over and over. And then he would like, I swear this, Amanda says she doesn't remember, he would touch the cat's butthole and he would smell it. And then he'd pet the cat some more, and he'd touch the cat's asshole, and then he would smell it. That dude was so drunk. Do you remember the guy had he had a white car over here. Justin Souders and I took him. He was so drunk, we got his car, and Justin drove the car back in here so that it was secure, so that this guy was inside the compound, and then we took his keys away.
He had a gun too.
We took his.
I remember
Justin took
there
his.
was gunplay there too.
Justin took his gun, and took his keys, and then the next morning when he appeared, we're like, "Hey, Justin has your stuff." Well, the dude was like, "Well, if you took my car keys, what else did you do to me?" We're like, "Hold on. This was for your own good, so that you did not drive. You were completely out of it, and you were talking about taking your car. So we brought your car over here so that it was secure, and we knew that, and we put blankets and shit on you." I saw that dude this time because this was the same dude that was like, hey, how do we know who's single at SRF? And I'm like, that's not a bad idea. We should probably have, if women want to be involved and men want to be involved, we should have a board where you write your name and you guys can match up or whatever. And Nicole's
it'd be like 28 days later.
And I'm like, you ought to just give them like a little medallion. Nicole's like, I'm not making people wear. I'm like, if they want to participate, let them participate, whatever.
How about an armband?
Yeah. Like
some sort of armband with some sort of something on there, right? That lets you know that.
So I saw that dude this time and he had a girl with him. I'm like, oh, he got a chick. Well, I later saw him again, a little drunk, did not see a female. So Amanda's like, that was just some chick that was here. And I'm like, no, I think he actually has a girlfriend. So I don't know, but it's the same dude. I don't think that he remembers any of this happening.
Did we did.
What?
I was just gonna say, so we recently had a party, and did we have a
he was at the party.
A blackout drunk.
He was at the party.
No, but it was a what would you consider him? I mean, he's not
contractor.
An employee. Yeah, outside
contractor.
Yeah. He
Skibbity.
He really got belligerent.
Do you not know about this?
You don't know about this.
I was here till 1:30 too.
Yeah, he didn't start drinking until
well, he was drinking the whole time.
Yeah.
He was a lot of fun, and I think the alcohol loosened him up, but he never stopped drinking. He got a little combative. Some things happened.
My hype man. Right?
He broke some of Amanda's like Victorian fucking cast iron furniture. I don't think he knows it happened. I don't think he has a clue.
There's no way.
I don't think he knows. No, like that dude really fucking put in work. Like I would have liked to have had him around. And he just like it got worse and worse. So they set him by the fire barrels and he was out in the snow, out in the rain, asleep. And he would wake up and you'd watch him because he's cold. He'd go start putting wood back in the fire barrel, in the burn barrel. So for about every 5 pieces, one would go in the burn barrel, one would fall outside. And he's just like, almost like a fentanyl zombie. He's so fucking drunk.
Yeah, he was drunk.
And then he'd be asleep for a couple hours, then he'd wake up and want to like be of assistance to people, but he was so belligerent. I don't think he has a clue that this even happened. I don't think he even knows.
When I got there, he was doing the drunk I love you thing and wanted to show me how to tie my boots like 50 times. And so I was just like, okay, whatever, he's drunk. And then they had opened the front door. And so I'm trying to maneuver away from him. And then he ends up like, I'm going to make breakfast for everyone. And goes inside. And he's in the kitchen talking about making breakfast. I'm like, make that breakfast, motherfucker. And I walk outside and then one of the guys is like, John doesn't want him inside. I'm like, well, you should have said that before. I go, we'll get him out. And so we went in there and got him out. But
my concern is that he light the kitchen on fire, which is a real possibility.
It's a possibility.
Like that's a real fucking thing. The last thing I need is the kitchen on fire or the fire suppression going off.
Except that then became like an hour-long battle about why everybody hates him because we won't let him make breakfast for everybody.
And it's not that anybody
he was drunk. It was funny.
Speaking of lighting shit on fire, did you see the shit? Did you see the lady on fire on the subway?
I saw that. We were just talking about that.
So what do you think that was?
Well, okay. There is 2 distinct possibilities. One, people are just fucking assholes and didn't do anything to help that lady.
I think that's part of it.
Or 2, that me and Brandon were talking about earlier is that could have been completely fake. That may not even have been real.
Think so?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, let me tell you this. Maybe you're not aware.
I don't know. But
they've got a dude. They've got his name. Mm-hmm. They said that he is the person that lit her on fire. He has been actually apprehended and deported out of the country and has been back in the country now. We already have him on record.
Come on, no. Really? Come on. It couldn't possibly be one of those from millions of people that the Biden administration let across.
Paraguay or someplace down there. And they've got his name and everything. Now, my question was, who the fuck, like, if she's on fire, right? Had she already OD'd on fentanyl? She was passed out. Was she so drunk and he lit her on? Like, she doesn't even seem to be trying to.
Well, by the point
that you're that on fire.
By the point where they're showing it, she's dead. smoke just the pure flame inhalation would have killed her. The thing that we were talking about, though, that me and Brandel brought up is you're on a subway car.
Yeah.
A subway car.
Right. Nobody extinguished her. Nothing.
In a subway station, and there's not a motherfucking fire extinguisher?
Of course there is.
There's not a fire extinguisher?
Where's all the law enforcement? Where's all the fucking...
Well, police officer
walks... 1,000 National Guards they've put down there?
According to Brandel, a police officer walks right by her.
There's somebody sitting on the bench watching it fucking happen. There's somebody clearly videoing it.
I kind of feel like, and this would be very hard to regulate and hard to do, but I kind of feel like that in that particular situation, people should be charged for not doing something.
Right.
I mean, again, that's going to be hard to quantify because by the
now
time
this
we're
is
watching
on the heels of this is on the heels of the
dead.
penny. This is on the heels of the penny thing, right? You've got crazy Michael Jackson who's been arrested over 73 times assault and battery. This dude fucking brings him down, chokes him out, and then fucking they prosecute him, a Marine, for assisting all these people on the bus who he was threatening.
Yeah.
And then they make a big fucking to-do over this dude. Everybody's gun shy of assisting anybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how you... I mean, we've created a society that thinks that standing by with your phone and videotaping everything is more important than just being a decent human being. Because the reality is, even if... Here's the thing.
I think the powers that be want that.
Even if
you've got the tattletale,
yeah,
and you don't have anybody doing the job that the fucking law enforcement and fucking government should be doing.
Even law enforcement's not doing. Because even the reality is, even at the point where we're watching the video, and she is definitely dead. Just standing there with your phone recording her burned down to the fucking ground, that should be chargeable. You should at least have the decency to be like, I'm going to fucking put that fire out.
What's the accelerant?
I don't know what the accelerant was, but probably some sort of alcohol base. But
yeah, they've got a name and everything. They're parading out in front of social media right now. Some illegal immigrant.
Of course.
What about the drones?
They probably won't charge them.
The drones have just no word of drones this week other than we're going to shoot down drones. You better not have any drones. There's a drone ban. That ban's just for you and me. That's not for whoever's flying that shit.
It's the reality is the reason why we're not talking about drones anymore is because the mission's over.
Did you see all the green lasers they said we're using to mapping software, mapping lasers coming out of a lot of those drones? Those green. Did you ever see that green bar?
No.
Same thing happened in Hawaii before the fires. Like a month before the fires, they had a bunch of fucking green lasers coming down. Everybody was talking about. The same thing happened here in New York and New Jersey. A lot of those drones were putting out this green laser beam that was just a beam across the ground. And there was a lot of that shit in Hawaii. If you look it up, before the fires, there was a lot of that shit going on in Hawaii.
Well, not trying to put two and two together, but the reality is this was a known program. NASA working with the military to do large autonomous equipment transfers. So they already 3 years ago they requested and received the airspace. So the lanes that they were flying in was within this airspace. This is what's going on. Okay, you have the federal government. Working at a military level in order to institute an autonomous transportation system that the government can use to move things to and from military bases, is what they're saying. But what this really is, and this is why it was done in New Jersey, is because New Jersey is a real city, but it's not New York City. It gives them the opportunity to test out this equipment within an urban environment to see if it's feasible, right?
So do you think these drones actually dropped any merchandise off? You think?
No. It's just what they're doing is what they're likely doing is testing the corridors to see. Like I'll give you an example, and you've talked about this before. World War I ends. Fighter A John Willis decides, I really love this biplane. So he just flies it home and lands it in his cornfield. And on the weekends, he's out flying around and doing loop-de-loops and doing all kinds of shit. As air traffic gets more and more feasible, they have to create traffic lanes in the sky in order to keep planes from crashing into each other. Like if you go ahead and take a look at how many planes are over the United States at any given time, it's fucking ridiculous how many planes are up there. That's all government coordinated lanes of flight departure and elevation and all that stuff that has to be coordinated, years in advance in order to make sure that the planes that go into LaGuardia don't all crash into each other, right? That's what they're doing right now. What they're doing right now is they're figuring out how to move basically, and that's why they keep talking about UPS or SUV sized vehicles. They're basically trying to figure out how do we use autonomous UPS trucks to fly around major metropolitan areas and drop off everybody's fucking stupid shit, right? And the military is always the first. So if you think about like when you think about the internet that you use to watch copious amounts of porn on it, that belonged to the military first. It's how we talked to all our missile commands, and then it just got manipulated enough to where we could use it, right? It's the same. I guarantee you that's the same thing that's going on right now. They built a bunch of very large drones. They wanted to see, because that's the other thing that this guy found out because there's actually official paperwork on these lanes in New Jersey that not only could the drones fly from one military location to another military location, but they also had permission to land these drones anywhere in between, because it's not. And here's the other thing. Again, it's a Department of Defense, but NASA program. And when the Department of Defense comes out and says these are not military vehicles, they're not lying. They're not. They're whatever drone company is making these drones. It's a civilian. It's a military project with civilian drones to see the feasibility of being able to use it for the military, right? So they're not lying. It's no different than, we talked about this before, when they did that big autonomous vehicle thing in the desert where you see how far these things could drive on their own. None of those were military vehicles. They didn't belong to the military. They belonged to
Have you seen the CEO of this drone company out talking about these things?
I've seen it.
He's been a few different places.
But I will go with I will always default to the paperwork, because that's the thing about the military.
Who is it that found this paperwork?
I can't think of his name. He's a real investigative reporter. And so he found the actual documentation, because the thing about the military that a lot of people, or the Department of Defense that a lot of people don't understand, is we work on a 5-year cycle. We work on a 5-year budget. And so the thing that we're fucking around with today was actually budgeted 5 years ago. And so if you're going to, I don't know, if you want to test a new flamethrower and you want to set up all the parameters, you budget it for 2024, the project's probably not going to go off until 2028.
Man, I would have lost interest by then. Could you imagine?
Well,
not being able to test your shit.
But it's kind of the reason why, when people talk about us being behind the power curve, it's kind of the reason why, because we have to budget 5 years out. And if you think about it, like, I don't know, let's think about a piece of technology, this iPhone. If the government was like, hey, it'd be really cool if all U.S. troops had this capability, they're going to budget for it. They're gonna do all the test and operational stuff to get it ready for the forces. But by the time the forces get this, they're like, what the fuck is up with this flip phone? I've got an iPhone. Why do I want to flip? You know what I'm saying? It's hard to keep pace with the technology when you're doing that. So if you think about the reality of the world right now, the government is, again, we look at a Reaper drone and we think, wow. But a Reaper drone costs way too much fucking money when you can have a DJI drone that does exactly what a Reaper drone does, faster, more capable, more nimble, at a lower operational cost, lower level. So the civilian drone market is way ahead of what the military is doing.
I've heard a lot of people the last few days. Actually, I've heard a lot of people saying that the United States is actually 5 years behind in drone technology because of the FAA limiting civilian drone market, for instance. Whereas overseas, there is no controlling body on any of this drone stuff right now because they're using it to fight a war with. So they're just rapidly ahead of where we are. Whereas if you built a drone like that and took off, somebody would be knocking on your door. Like during COVID, a lot of the FAA actually went around to a lot of YouTube channels and literally came and federal investigators knocked on dude's door. They're like, hey, you've been using this drone, you don't have a license. And what they were looking for is they wanted him to go, hey, I did wrong. I realized the error in my ways. I went and got my license, and you guys should too. They just like they did to Whistling Diesel, right? They wanted him to make a video about how dangerous it was to ride your jet ski, even though nobody was around, and push people into their boater safety classes. That's what they were doing, and they fucking actually fined tons of fucking YouTubers for just flying their fucking drones.
Again, when you say that there's not an organization around the world, the FAA rules and regulations concerning flight paths of commercial aircraft are universally everywhere.
Correct. And your civilian drones can't fly over 400 feet because of that.
Yeah, your same thing. It's the same thing in China. It's the same thing because, again, you can't, with the amount of air traffic we have, you can't have a wild, wild west anywhere because then planes would just be crashing each other. Now, with the drones, same thing. The problem that the United States has, or countries in general. So, like when you see a big drone thing in China where it's a fucking dragon flying through the air.
Did you see the recent one?
Yeah, they do.
Where it just drones started falling out of the air and started fucking flying into the crowd and shit, attacking people.
I saw that one too. But what I'm saying is, you see these things over in China where it's this big extravaganza of drones. Now, that is a government-specific thing that's being run in order to, create that spectacle or understand the realities of drones, right? The application of drones, drone swarms and things like that. In the United States, we're not doing that. That's the difference. The United States, we're not.
We have some. We've done some of that. I think at Disneyland, Disney World for some things, and I think they did a big drone thing during the Super Bowl. I thought
we do them,
not like they do, though.
But not like they're doing. Mm-hmm. So, for example, they have, I think, First Marines, and I'm sure the Army has it the same thing, where they've started creating these little drone parks on base, where they're providing drones for soldiers and airmen and whoever to fucking play with these things and kind of understand the reality of it. Instead of where the Chinese are directly making units that's what they do, right? It's no different than if you take a look at Ukraine, right? I think we have this idea in our head that I can just give a troop a controller and a fucking drone and be effective. Well, even in Ukraine, that's not the case. The guys that are flying those drones, they're fucking rock stars, and they protect those individual dudes because it's a technical, the reality is, to be really effective and really on point with the drone system, you really have to be the drone guy. You can't be the drone guy and the machine gunner, the drone guy and the tank driver. It doesn't work.
If there's some videos, like Grand Thumb had some guys over from Israel, and one of those dudes was a drone dude. There was some footage of him or somebody, controlling the drone. And same thing with the embedded units, like in Ukraine, when you see video of those guys coming back. And he had some Ukraine dudes over also. I think Grand Thumb had, and some of those guys. There was a lot of information about drones in just that Grand Thumb, those two videos. And that was the case. You see them, and there's dudes, there's security, and there's the drone dude. Yeah, you do see that.
The reality is a drone, if the military was really paying attention to what was going on in the world, there would be an emphasis on new, not high level, low-level drone operation, meaning, obviously the Air Force has drone pilots that fly Raptors and shit like that. You need a specific school set for guys that just are flying DJI drones, because the capability of those systems are so outside the norm of what the military is currently doing. Like, the reality is, every piece of reconnaissance, Force Recon, Battalion Recon, any of the Army Recon, are all being done strictly with drones now. And that's in war in Ukraine. And
electric bikes.
Right? So you can do all the tactical reconnaissance with the drone. You can also do mitigation, meaning you can deny the enemy the use of certain avenues of approach, specifically with just drones. You can fucking deny them all kinds of shit with drones, because the Ukrainians have a drone now that has it will hold 4 60-millimeter mortars. When you think about that,
how big is that drone?
That it's a farm drone, so it's pretty big.
Yeah.
But still, it's holding 4 60-millimeter mortars that
it's the size of a pickup truck bed.
Doesn't require a crew, meaning there's not a 3-man crew that's operating that mortar system. It's one guy flying that fucking drone over a battlefield that's getting pinpoint accuracy with a mortar. First round hits.
What kind of damage can that 60-millimeter mortar? Will it take out like a tank, or?
I believe top attack it will, if it hits the top of the turret, because tanks aren't.
You're not really using it anti-personnel.
No, you could use it definitely.
Absolutely, you could, but is that an application that you would use on a normal basis?
It's perfect, because with a drone, basically what I can do with a drone is I can fly to your defensive positions, right? And I can fly your trench line until I find where you're at, and then just start dropping mortars on it. It's way better than because what people don't understand now are, we have technology that's a lot better. I get it, I understand. But normally what happens is you're out in front of me a mile away from me, right? I want to attack you. What I do is I line up a bunch of fucking artillery pieces, line them up, and then I fire a shit ton of artillery at the area I think you're in.
And try to walk them on target.
Where, with the drone, I don't need to do that.
What's the cost of a 60-millimeter mortar, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. It's not that bad. It's
pretty
cost effective. I don't know. I bet in today's economy, they're probably $500 a piece.
Do you think that you will see artillery shells like that be purpose-made for drones, or do you think they'll continue to just use the same product that can be put in a tube?
We'll start purpose-making ammunition for those. We'll start purpose.
Did you watch the video I sent you of the guy that 3D printed the mortar shell?
Yeah, that's cool as shit.
And then had the lights on it. Did you hear that motherfucker whistling coming in? Holy shit.
I would love 10 of those.
And he was launching it out of what, a potato cannon?
Yeah, just potato cannon.
What's the accelerant? Because you never saw him
just air.
Just compressed air.
Just compressed air, yeah.
Holy shit.
So that's 3D printed.
Like, could you imagine? Okay, so he fired that up in the air, right? I assume he has a lot of farmland, because it came down somewhere
in a farm
where you could hear it.
Yeah.
Could you imagine what that would do if that just hit the roof of my building or any house around here?
It depends on because I noticed in the beginning of the video, he kind of breaks it off.
Because it was 3D printed.
3D printed. So it really is going to depend on how much it weighs.
So you think it's frangible? It would just break up? It's still going to go through the roof of my building.
I don't think it would. I think because again, we're really dependent on how much that thing weighs. Because I could throw a Nerf football 100 miles an hour. It's not going to go through your roof. It's just going to ping off your roof. I mean, I can't particularly throw 100 miles an hour, but what I'm saying is it depends on the density of it and how much it weighs. If it's really as lightweight as I think it is, then it probably would not go through your roof.
Man, I have dents in my roof from hail.
Yeah,
I would imagine that thing would go through.
Because if you look at, even when he's shooting it like a mortar, it only goes, now again.
Now there's no crime there.
No.
Right? Until there is an explosive payload.
No crime until there's an explosive payload.
I remember seeing, I think I had something for my kid.
I mean, the reality is it's not even
That's not even potato cannon.
It's
'cause
just
compressed air.
The only thing you could say is it's a projectile, but it's not, because there's no explosive.
I had something for my kid. I remember having a Nerf thing that you like pumped up, and when you shot it, it whistled.
Yeah.
I just think that'd be cool to print one of those mortar things with a whistle built into it, you know, because it was already humming.
I love the sound of it.
Yeah.
I think I'm like, man, can you just imagine just shooting that over people's heads? It would freak them out.
Fuck yeah, anything over people's heads would freak them out.
Yeah, that thing was pretty badass. I loved that thing.
It's pretty wild, yeah.
Anyway, but drones are the way, and I think the U.S. military and the powers that be are really kind of.
I think there's a big push in this.
They're kind of.
I don't
like,
think any of this was because of it, but as a byproduct, they're going to try to regulate more drones for the civilian market. They're already talking about that shit.
Here's the reality. If let's just take a look at what I was talking about as far as Jersey goes. If the U.S. government decides that it's viable to have Uber Eats come to your house
well, they already are.
No, but I mean,
yeah.
If it becomes to the point where it's commercially viable, right, to have whatever delivered to your house via drone, even if it's just, think about it this, even if it's just I'm using large drones to deliver to hubs, and then I'm having people in fucking electric cars deliver the shit to people's houses, right? What that's going to do is it's going to create another airspace layer. So there's going to be an airspace layer where commercial drones operate in order to get you your fucking McDonald's Happy Meal.
If you go back, first time we had a drone on the property was 6-8 years ago, right? And it was a DJI, like a Mavic 4 or whatever. It's one of the big white ones, right? Whatever that was. I have one in a Pelican case inside. Christian Green had one. Now that motherfucker would fly 1,000 feet. Mm-hmm. Now the drones, they lock out at 400. And the big push when they started making people register their drones is because Amazon and Grubhub and Uber Eats wanted that airspace, right? So that airspace was under 400 feet. It was 100 to 400. And then they started putting parameters on our shit. Yeah. I've got a new drone sitting in there the newest one. It's about a year old now. The drones I used to get, when you would just bump them into something, the motor arms would break. That's the arm that comes out that has the motor arm. We would break those all the time. I have a 5-gallon bucket full of them. The new one, and I never would have bought these littler drones. They started making them lighter and lighter because they're like, we have to regulate these. The heavier the drone, the more payload. So they came out with these light drones, these minis. And I never wanted one because I figured they weren't stable up in the air when we started getting weather and shit. And Josh said, man, this 4 mini is awesome. So I bought one. And it does everything that my bigger drone did. And it has a better run life. Everything about it's better. And I've bumped it into all kinds of shit. And this drone hasn't broken. This particular drone's been underwater in a frozen pond. I was landing down where some birds were. And I didn't realize the pond wasn't frozen. It went under. And I pull it back up. It didn't fly. I turned it off. And I went to power it back up. It wouldn't take off that night. But I put it in front of a fan when we got home. And the next morning, that drone flew. It's the same thing. Great drone. It's done everything I wanted. But that thing, I never did register it to my account. I just locked it in, flew it. When they had the hazmat thing happen here, maybe a few months ago, I went to put the drone up to see what was going on. The drone wouldn't take off over 30 feet. It wouldn't go above 30 and wouldn't fly beyond 50 meters. And I'm like, maybe there's a NOTAM going on or something. Maybe they have some controlled airspace because of that, and that's why the bird won't take off. Waited, everything cleared, went to take off, same thing, says I have to register it to an account. As soon as I logged it into my account, lets it take off, lets it do everything it's supposed to do. Now it is registered, and they know where this bird is flying, and it is now registered in my account. I've had this fucking thing for over a year, and it's never been registered.
Yeah, but, okay, so we get back to what I was talking about is as that
it's going to constrict.
It's going to constrict. Yep. So when you like, let's say you can go 400 feet now, or when you were doing 1,000, that
it'll still, now that it's registered, I can click a button and take responsibility. It'll fly up to 1,500 feet now, which I believe is illegal to do. You cannot fly a drone and have it out of your sight legally. You have to have line of sight with the drone.
Well, anyways, what's going to happen is you're probably going to see a future, a not too distant future, where before you can even fly, you're going to have to deconflict with already established route drones. Meaning, so if, like, let's just say Uber Eats does deliver a pizza to fucking to the compound. Well, if they do deliver pizza to the compound, you're going to have to deconflict, because what'll happen is, what they'll do is they'll say the commercial travel is more important than your recreational travel. And so you're going to see, this is kind of like, let's just go back to John Willis, the World War I fighter ace who brought his biplane back. This is going to kind of go back to those days. If you think about back in those days, if you had the capability to have an airplane, you could fly it anywhere. There was no, like, if you were Amelia Earhart and you wanted to land in a cornfield in fucking Iowa, people would be out there with flags waving and shit, and they'd be like, hey, thanks. Those days are dead because commercial air travel has ruined it for, hobbyist flyers, right? Yeah. It's going to be the same thing with drones. That the commercial space is going to take all that over, and I would say that anybody who is flying drones today or over let's say the last 10 years is in the heyday of drones. And you're going to look back at these days and go, man, do you remember when we didn't have to fucking file an official flight plan with the FAA and have it registered and pay a tax on this motherfucker every year?
Yeah,
that's where it's going.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I've been telling guys for years, everybody should have a drone, especially if you own property, if you're a prepper or whatever. Like, I carry a drone every time we leave. You can ask Brandel. Every time we leave the building, there's a drone in the truck. Simply because if we are stopped on the interstate, I want to see how far that traffic is, what that looks like. Is something coming back? Is there a cloud of fucking chlorine gas up there? Anything. And you can know that in under a minute, right? When we hear equipment running, is that equipment coming towards the property? Is it on the property? Where's that smoke coming from? Is there a fire? Is it my neighbor's house on fire? Is it just somebody burning some leaves? You can find all that out with the drone.
I always thought it would be really cool, because this goes back even before you had a drone. I don't know if you remember this, but I think Ranger Dave was the first person I actually met that was controlling drones. And I always thought when he was playing with that drone and talking about all the things that he could do with it, I always thought it would be really cool if you had it'd be kind of easy to do now. I think his drone was kind of big back in the day, but to just have like a bubble on top of your vehicle that has a drone sitting in it, that it just slides back and then the drone could fly up and you could be like in the car going.
The SEALs had something like that even 20 years ago. They were just throwing them off the back. It was like it was like an airplane, and you had to throw it into the wind and it would kind of come up.
We had those.
Yeah, we saw that. No, that would be good.
We had those in Camp Gannon, and Gannon was right. Basically, one of our walls was the Syrian border, and so the S2 guys would fly those drones, and they were pretty crude back then, but you would put a program in where you wanted it to land, and every now and then that motherfucking drone would fly over the border and go into Syria, and they'd be like, it's fucking gone, we're never going to see that shit again, it's gone. They would get another drone, and then like 2 days later there'd be a fucking lieutenant colonel from the Syrian army with 2 guys with rifles standing at the border checkpoint holding the fucking drone, and then they would give it back to us, which I thought was pretty cool, because they were actually the Syrian. This is we're mad at Syria. Back then we were friends with Syria, but because Camp Gannon was right on the border, the bad guys were always shooting shit at us, and 9 times out of 10 it would go over. And so anything within kind of the Camp Gannon radius in Syria was getting the shit blown out of it because they were trying to hit us. But those guys were still, the guys that were at that border checkpoint, they were always like, here's your fucking M16 you left in Syria. Here's your fucking drones.
So as convenient as the DJI stuff is, they're in bed with your government, right? They're following all the parameters. It's got all the tattletale shit in it. You really need to have the ability to 3D print a drone and probably have some components to build them like they are over in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
If Russia can't jam that shit, I mean, obviously they have a lot of stuff on board those drones, whereas maybe it doesn't track, right? It doesn't have the tattletale shit in there. Or just find older drones. And I know guys that are jailbreaking. I don't know them, but I know people are rewriting the drones. They're removing the software and putting their own software on there. Because right now, everything is tracked, and they could shut all that shit down. But if you had a drone that didn't have all that bullshit in there, they probably couldn't control whether you're taking off or whatever.
Again.
And as far as using it just for reconnaissance, it would be good to have a drone. Like, we used to have to put the drone up in the air, bring it down, and then watch the card, right? We had to watch the data that was on there to see. It's just like a game camera. It was of no use. Now game cameras talk to your phone, but having that remote, you can view it real time, so you know what's going on with that shit.
Again, it always boils down to how big something gets, right? So when you think about you
need some gray market shit.
But when you think about DJI, right? Mm-hmm. The reason why you know DJI...
Because it's so convenient. It just fucking works.
It's not that. It's because they're the biggest in the market. Mm-hmm. And the problem with being the biggest in the market, you've got to play ball with the government. It's like if for some reason I don't know. Let's just say some reason tomorrow the fucking federal government goes, you know what would be cool? It would be real cool if every fucking federal employee had an SOE tool bag. That would just be really cool. There would be plenty of things that would come along with that SOE tool bag. And one day people would be just like, remember when John used to make shotgun rigs? It was so cool when John made shotgun rigs, but now that he makes tool bags, I guess we can't have shotgun rigs. It would just be one of those things that just by the fact that you're doing that large of, because I mean, think about it. Again, I'm not a drone guy. I only know the name of one other drone, and it may be, one other commercial drone.
Autel.
And it may be a DJI product. I just don't know. But the only other one was the Parrot drone.
That's something else.
Yeah. That's the only other name I know, and the only reason why I know that is because that guy, I don't know who he was, had it here at the party the one time, and it did a flip. And everybody thought that was cool. But I mean, that's...
So you got the DJI, and they have a bunch of them. Like, I've got 4 or 5 different DJI drones in there. When you look at the Dirty Civilian video on drones, they're talking about Autel. The Autel drone, to get the package that I have,
they're talking about we might have seen the same video. Is that the one that has a thermal camera on it? Yeah.
So you got to get a DJI Mavic Pro 3 to get DJI with thermal, right? You're like $3,500 or so.
Really? That's all?
The Autel drone is like $4,500. Yeah. It's a little bigger. The controller, the smart controller with the monitor, is also larger. The fly time's better, everything about it, and it doesn't have all the fucking tattletale shit in there. It doesn't have all the lockdowns and the parameters that the DJI stuff has. So it's kind of wide open. It does have thermal. It seems to do everything better than the DJI does, and you're about $4,500 for that package the way you would want it. Pretty neat.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like,
I think it's worth it.
I mean, I feel like, I've been pushing thermals. I've been pushing thermals as a personal item, right? Mm-hmm. That I think everybody should be using thermals and not. They should be getting away from NVG squared.
There's 2 trains of thought with that, right? You're looking at for the world has ended. If they're out there, we're shooting them. We don't have to identify who that target is, right? When you talk to night vision thermal dudes, Don Edwards, for instance, right? You need night vision to see the target. You need thermal to see the target, to find the target. You need night vision to identify the target. Whereas overseas, that doesn't matter.
Well, again, that's I think the problem is we're talking about old technology. So yes, if I had the PVS, no. God, I can't think of the name of it. If I had the PAS 13 or 17, if I had the original military PAS thermal, I would use that past thermal to find the heat source, right?
Well, what are we even talking originally? I mean, we had a thermal from Teledyne Ryan.
Yeah,
It hummed. It had to cool down, and like you could see some shit out there, but you know who the fuck that was.
This is a much better targeting system. But so military wise, I would find it, and then I would use night vision to engage it. You don't need even if you're talking about having to identify friend or foe. The thermal technology out there now, at reasonable engagement distances. So if we're talking, the reality is, if we're talking under 300 yards, you can do that with a thermal. You can't.
What's the price on that?
Oh, it's fucking expensive, right?
Wild ass guess.
No. I mean, my guess is 15 grand.
Who's it coming from?
One of the three, one of the big, BAs. It's expensive.
But that's
where
not
you can,
like 15's now. It's touchable now, like 15 grand.
Well, I mean, for a guy who just has to do a sale on tool bags, yeah. But for us regular munchies who are
what are quads still? 30 grand?
13, I think.
Down to 13?
No. I'm sorry. You said quads.
Like panos.
Yeah, I think panos are still 25,000.
So 15 grand for a thermal unit.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Thermals are.
And now you're going to weapons mount that, or that's a helmet mount?
If you're gonna compare the two, right? If you're gonna compare the two, just out of the box, you're gonna get dual tubes. You're gonna get some sort of dual tube system, PVS 37s or whatever. You're gonna get dual tube systems. Or you're going to go thermal. I can get a $5,000 thermal. I can get a $5,000 thermal scope from Pulsar against your $13,000 PVS 37s, and I will kill you every fucking single day of the week before you even see me.
But it won't see through glass.
Won't see through glass.
Okay, so this.
But the reality is
this Pulsar thing.
But the reality is even PVS 37s, right? The best fucking night visions on the face of the planet.
What if I'm in a room, 37? You talking about like 31s, like dual tubes?
Or 31s, yeah. If I'm in a room, and the lights are off, you're not seeing me on the other side of the glass anyway. So it's not like apples or oranges. If I don't have night vision and I step into a shadow, a real existing shadow, and you have your 31s, you're going to walk right by me.
Okay, so the Pulsar thing for $5 grand.
Yeah. Rifle mounted.
Okay, so it's rifle mounted. Has a reticle inside it?
Has a reticle in it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got a reticle in it. So, again...
Could you wear 31s?
Yeah.
And have this on the gun and look through it with your night vision?
No, you can't. You can't do it. You can't do that. You just can't, because the way the offset is. And again, here's the thing. Even if you're better off, like you would be better off if you were wearing a thermal, looking for targets, and you had a night vision device on your rifle.
Like a clip-on?
Yeah.
Like one of the big optics that go on there?
I mean, you could, even if it was, the reality is, even if it was a fucking 1980s PVS 4.
But something on the rifle has to have a reticle on it. So, yeah. So you're not using laser any longer.
No, you don't want to use laser anymore.
Can you see laser through thermal?
No. Cannot see laser through. Not currently.
Currently. I bet you can. I'll bet they do have it.
No, they don't have it yet because it's super expensive. So, and this
Aren't they doing hybrid between night vision and thermal in one unit?
They are doing hybrid, but what they're finding out is they don't need to do because of software adaptation. They don't need to do that. They can take thermal units and use them as highlighters. So, like if you can go on YouTube and see this right now. The Army has them with that new thing that's against the face. It looks like a fucking scuba mask. What it does is it shows everything and then highlights all the heat, right? So you don't even need to square it up anymore. You can just use thermal. It's I mean, again, thermal is the way of the future for the ground guy. Drones are the way of the future for warfare. It's just there's no way around it. Unless the only thing The only thing that may stop drones is if somebody creates a weapon like a fucking EMP gun or something like that, something that can actually shut those things down.
Well, they already have it. I mean, they've showed them demonstrated at big sporting events and shit. They've shown drones in the air, and the dude's got the rifle-looking thing, and he fucking controls it and lands it.
Totally not effective.
So, how long till you think you start seeing drones armed being used inside the United States?
Well, the truth is, drones delivering a payload predates the war. So drones used to deliver a payload have been dropping drugs into jails all over the United States for a long time. So we actually, well, let's just say the narco industry in the United States actually developed payloaded drones way before they were using them in Ukraine.
How long till we see law enforcement with armed drones?
But that's for you. For example, for you, you were talking about your little mini drone and how you love it. You're like, oh, it does all this shit. The difference between that and the big DJI that you have in there is right this fucking second, we can get a program to 3D print a fucking device.
You can buy it off Amazon.
That will drop a grenade off of that drone. It's on Amazon. Yeah, that drone right there will carry an M67 fragmentation grenade.
You can buy it off Amazon. It's already on Amazon.
Well, you don't want to buy it off Amazon.
But my point is, like during COVID, we got a friend that was delivering eggs to his neighbor with one of these things off of his drone.
Oh, that's funny. But when you say how long until like law enforcement arms, I mean, I guarantee they're already doing it. If you think back to our time as young lads in the 90s, the motherfucking robots that they used to drive into people's houses, the FBI put a shotgun on that the first minute. The minute
they had 50 cal carts for disruptors. And
the minute we create a thing, the minute we create some sort of thing that will drive around on its own, we're going to figure out how to put.
Remember the balls? Remember the balls you would throw out, and they would right themselves, had a gyro on them and shit. They'd go upstairs and stuff.
I've seen those. I see those all for sale on eBay, and I've seen them. So want to buy one, but I'm like, what am I going to do with that?
Ranger Dave had some last time I saw him.
Guaranteed.
I saw him. He had them.
I know, guaranteed.
Yeah, he had a set of them.
You know what the difference was?
His worked.
Yeah, well, Ranger Dave. Not only did you throw the ball in the room, and it righted itself and could look around the room, but I'll bet Ranger Dave somehow put a motor in there so it kind of followed you around the house and shit. And there was probably a single shot 22 in the thing. So when you got close, boom.
I knew a dude named Ken. He's passed away now years ago. He had some robots he brought out to attack response with him, and these things would go. It didn't look like a humanoid robot. It was like more like a little tank thing. But this motherfucker would climb. It would go upstairs and downstairs and all kinds of shit. And he had it armed. It was armed. He did EOD shit.
Yeah.
And he had cameras and disruptors and stuff on it. Just for anybody not listening, disruptor is just when you have a device and they want to blow it in place, they'll use a 50 cal cartridge, and it basically is just a breech and a little short barrel, and they'll drive it up to the thing they think is explosives, and they'll blow it up with a 50 cal.
So I mean, that's kind of our future. So if you have a kid who is 10 years old, that's all I would be doing is making him run drones. It's going to be a valuable asset in the future,
along with physical fitness.
No, we're done physical fitting.
You think so?
Yeah. It's going to be
somebody's got to go out there and take down the towers and shit.
It's going to be a fucking drone.
So you think all special operations is no longer they don't got to swim. They're just going to be little emaciated Bill Gates looking guys.
They'll probably be some sort of like condensed version of what the old guys went through, just because if you think about it, it's going to be an old guy who's in charge of drone special forces. So it'll be an old guy in charge of drone special forces. So he'll do some like a kiddie camp conversion of what the guys used to have to go through, just so he can be like, you made it.
So do you think all the drone shit's going to fall under Space Force?
No, it's
What do you
too.
think Space Force is? Because all these drones supposedly were over Space Force bases. You know, we have Space Force
Yeah.
bases or some shit
Yeah.
now.
Well, it's kind of an oxymoron. Is Space Force used to be Space Command, which was part of the Air Force, and when we created Space Force, we didn't be like we weren't like, hey, who wants to join Space Force? We basically was like, hey, it's kind of why their uniforms look like shit. We went, hey, Air Force, all you guys who were on Space Command, you're now in Space Force. Thank you. And so those bases already existed, right? For the most part, they already existed. They just co-opted them.
Space Force have anything to do with space?
Oh yeah, yeah. Because the thing about Space Force is, Space Force was the strategic asset that was responsible for all satellites. So whenever you think about like a GPS satellite, right? It's not NASA that's responsible for those, because it's strategically important for the U.S. military to have those satellites functioning. It was the Air Force. It was Space Command. Space Command was the one that was responsible for every launch. It wasn't, again, when we put a satellite in space that was strategically military, NASA didn't have anything to do with it. It was Space Force that was doing that, or it would have been strategic. It would have been the Strategic Space Command that was doing it, and that's kind of the same thing they're doing now. So they're basically responsible for operating all the, layman's term, the GPS, because it's probably not even GPS anymore. All the GPS communication satellites that are around the world, all the communication satellites that are around the world, and now with the technologies that Elon Musk is bringing to the table, they're going to start moving space. It'll be Space Force that does all the movement of equipment and personnel that use ballistic missile technology in order to get them around the world. Like, so for example, they have in the Space Force world, they're saying that using technology that they currently have and that Elon Musk has developed, that they'll be able to put equipment. They keep, this is the funny thing, when they explain it to the layman, they're like, we're going to be able to put relief equipment anywhere in the world in 45 minutes. So when a hurricane happens in wherever, we can get equipment there. Again, not cost effective to send MREs to fucking Florida through Space Command. What they're really telling you is we're going to be able to put boots on the ground anywhere in the world in 45 minutes.
Where are they coming from?
Launch sites in Florida. Meaning, because they're going to use they'll use ballistic missile technology. So they'll use a craft similar to Elon Musk's Starfighter. And instead of putting it into space, they'll just use a ballistic missile trajectory to get it anywhere in the world. And if I can shoot you off like a rocket, so I'm going to shoot you off like I'm sending you to the moon, but instead of the moon, I'm going to use ballistic missile technology to swing you around to impact in China, right?
Within 45 minutes.
Yeah, 45 minutes. Easy.
And you think we've already put people in these things and tried them?
I don't know. I don't know if we have. Well, okay, I'll explain that in a second. So I use Elon Musk's rocket to shoot you across the planet to land in China somewhere. Well, what has Elon Musk brought to the table? He's brought a fucking self-landing rocket. So now all I need is a pad somewhere, and I can land that motherfucker anywhere in the world in 45 minutes. No different than if I was to attack you with a nuclear weapon.
How many people?
I don't know. I don't know how big his fucking Starliner is, but it'll be
Apparently,
big.
they just launched one that's fucking enormous.
But it'll be big.
It's like the size of a skyscraper.
Imagine you're in your bunker in Middle Eastern dirt squirrel country.
Bunker seems to be a pretty good business to be in right now, too.
And you're like, fuck America. We're going to go to war with America. And you start planning. And in the time it takes you to plan attacking America, a fucking Starliner's already landed in your backyard, and 45 fucking U.S. Marines, colonial Space Marines they'll probably be, come running off with blasters and start fucking you up. That's That's what we're talking about. We're talking about being able to strategically put special forces anywhere in the world in 45 minutes.
Wouldn't they be able to just use an ICBM and fucking blast that dude without putting troops there?
Well, I mean, yeah, but we can't just be ho-hummingly fucking using nuclear weapons all over the place.
You don't have to use a nuclear tip on it anymore, apparently.
Yeah.
Did you see?
It's not as cool.
Did you see Russia fucking just got hit with some drones? Everybody's comparing to 9/11.
Yeah, I saw it.
Those buildings didn't fall down.
Well, that's because the fucking drone is a little fucking little firecracker and shit.
They keep saying 9/11 attack in Russia, 9/11 attack in Russia.
Well, the reality is, could you look at what Ukraine is doing as desperation? Because that particular target...
Yeah, what was in that building?
...was not a strategic military target. So, them just attacking random buildings, it's not a strategic military target, so...
Maybe it was an accident.
Is that desperation? Could be an accident. The other thing too is when you have an arrow that you can shoot really far, you don't really know where the arrow is going to come down. You're just like, hey, bad guys are over there. Let's just shoot some arrows, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean that could be it too. I don't know. I think that the number one thing that should be taken from Ukraine is you always want to be on top when it comes to peer adversaries. We have no concept. We have lost the concept of what artillery looks like for Western forces. Trench warfare is still completely a possibility, even in this modern age. And drones supersede all other things. Like you think, like you take a look at the Russia. Russia has the third biggest air force in the world.
And they're not using
any of it.
How do you know if you're on top of a pure adversary if you haven't been tested? If you're not at war with them, how do you really know you're at the top? I think the powers that be understand that we're on top. Well, I don't question that we are, but I mean, we also thought Russia was in a place wholly different than where they are.
Yeah. Well, here's the real answer, or here's the real question that you have to be asking yourself, John.
And where the fuck is China really at?
Here's the real question you have to be asking yourself. Is that statement true? Like if we go back to let's just say 1995.
Not only that, is the statement true, or have we been lied to and led to believe
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Is that statement true? If we go back to 1995 and we look at the Department of Defense, did the people within the Department of Defense in 1995 actually think that Russia was a peer adversary and that they could put up a real fight? Maybe. Or maybe they need to emphasize every time Russia rolls out some new piece of shit equipment and pretend like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread so we can continue to spend billions and billions. Like, the reality is, if you look at the F-35, the F-35 is budgeted to fly for another 40 years. That means that we already know that the F-35 is that technically more advanced than anything anybody else is putting in the air. That we already know it. We already know that the F-22 Raptor will take down every fucking aircraft on the planet. Which means we also know that one of our oldest still flying aircraft, one of the oldest, not the oldest, the B-52 is the oldest, the F-15 Eagle will also peer destroy every fucking thing that they have because their stuff is such shit.
Haven't we already given F-35s to friendly countries?
Yes. F-35. So
how many friendly countries out there have we given shit to that we have then had to fight against?
Okay, there's two types of friends. The United States has two types of friends. They have friends that we know will be friends to the end, some ride or die friends, and then there are friends,
purchased friends,
that are acquaintances because of
NATO or whatever.
NATO. So, like, for example, the Iranians have F-14 Tomcats. at the time that we gave them those F-14 Tomcats, the F-14 Tomcat was kind of at the top of the food chain, right? So much so that all F-14 Tomcats that have come offline have been fucking run through a shredder because we don't want them to get any parts. When you look at
So how are they getting parts?
well, they've been doing some interesting black market stuff, but they've also been homegrowing a lot of parts to keep the planes in flight that they have.
How many do they have? Like 14 of them?
I don't remember what the total number is that they have left airborne. But an interesting thing about the Tomcat, about the Iranian Tomcats versus the U.S. Navy Tomcats, if you think about how much money the United States Navy spent keeping those Tomcats in the air, the Iranians, the few Iranian Tomcats that were left in Iran have shot down more enemy aircraft than all the Tomcats in the U.S. Navy.
It would seem like if you wanted to take those out, all you would have to do is blow up that runway. They're all in one place.
Again, John, we're not.
I understand.
We're not worried about Iranian
Iran.
Tomcats.
Yeah.
We're not worried about Iranian. There's nothing.
But the whole, back in '95, telling everybody about Russia and how they've come out with this new piece of equipment. So we got to do that. Part of that's controlling population. Also, you have to have a boogeyman.
Well,
how did the politicians get to the level of corruption they are currently at without the population pulling them out?
Well, yeah,
and making them pay for that?
That's kind of what I'm saying. Is I have to be able to go. When I have a M1 Abrams that's close to 30 years old, right? I have this tank that by all means is still used properly in the context that the U.S. forces use the M1 the armored units with. It's still top of the game, right? It's still top of the game. Now, if you're doing what Ukraine has had to do, and you're sending onesies and twosies out, of course they're going to get fucked up because that's not how you use armor. But they're still top of the game. If the U.S. Army, I want a new tank, it's hard for me to go, hey, America, M1 Abrams kind of old, because what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, but it's still good enough. I need to be able to go, the Russians just came out with the T-14 Armada, it is the hover tank. It's a hover tank, and it can kill an M1 Abrams like at 20 miles, and I have to create this air of illusion in order to get my new thing, right? And that's how again, that's why we are so technically advanced, is because we have been using China and Russia as this boogeyman that isn't real. Where are we at?
Well, we were talking about the tanks.
All kinds of crazy
So the guy with the Chieftain tanks, right?
Okay, tanks.
Drove down to Atlanta, found the tanks. They were sitting out in the field under the carport.
Yeah.
He got it started. I haven't heard. I guess there was going to be a part 2 to the video. I don't know if he actually bought them or was able to actually take them or not.
Yeah.
But in the comments, I saw a bunch of people saying, hey, yeah, that's awesome. You bought this tank. If you buy this, you get it started. You need a full-time dude to maintain these tanks. You've been out where there are live tanks in battle, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see, how many tanks are there usually? 8?
For what?
Like in Iraq.
Well, we'll see. That's kind of weird because the Marine Corps operates in fours.
Okay.
Tanks of fours. Where the Army, when you see the Army moving around, they're operating in platoons. So it's a lot of tanks.
Okay, so let's say that the Marine Corps had 4 tanks.
Yeah.
You see 4 tanks.
Mm-hmm.
What are you not seeing that goes with those 4 tanks?
Oh my God! For the M1 Abrams, the logistical footprint is huge. Requires a lot of maintenance. It's similar to like when you think about a helicopter, like an Apache helicopter. They're probably, and again, I know there's going to be some helicopter people out there like, ah! But it's like 5 to 1. They're probably putting 5 hours of maintenance in on that aircraft. It may be even worse than that, for every hour it's in the air.
So I say, like, I know.
But again, okay, think the problem is when people say log train and maintenance and all that, what they're doing,
combat.
They're trying to, not just combat, just training. They're trying to compare a thing that is getting kind of used and abused to a toy, right? So, for example, if I had an M1 Abrams the reality is 4 times a year I'm going to start it up and drive it 100 feet.
I don't believe that for a second.
You're talking you're talking gallons to the mile on that thing. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's not something that
at one time was there an M60 battle tank that was moved?
Yes.
How far was it moved?
1.5 miles.
How many trips in with 5-gallon cans of fuel did that take?
Four batteries. So 4 batteries and I want to say 60 gallons of fuel.
Isn't it 1 mile to 7 gallons?
No, it's a little bit different with the M60s. M60 is a little more fuel, a little more trickly fuel efficient than an M1 Abrams. Because remember,
a turbine.
Yeah, remember everyone they use a turbine diesel engine, and again it's based off of how you drive it. Right? So if you're pedal to the metal, yeah, you're using fucking fuel like it's no... But if you're driving it like a fucking tractor, it'll go far. It'll go far enough.
Where did that end up?
I don't know.
Okay. Was there never a concern that somebody was going to bomb that motherfucker while it was moving?
Well, that's why they moved it. It was moved in order to be outside of the...
bombing range.
Outside of the bombing range.
But it was inside the bombing range when it started moving to the out. Could you just imagine something?
Yeah. I think here's the thing. I think if especially at that time
if it got bombed, you wouldn't have known you were bombed.
Yeah, well, I think especially
it'd just be over with.
I think especially at that time period, cuz we are talking god damn 40 years ago?
40.
30?
What?
When was the Gulf War? Anybody remember the first one? 93? So we're talking a long fucking time ago.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are. The first Gulf War?
Yeah, I know when the first Gulf War was, but talking about this was not.
It's not as recent as you think.
It's not as old as you think, buddy.
Yeah, it is. It's old.
No, it's not.
It's old. And so what I'm saying is at that time period, I think if you were flying, let's say you were cleared hot at that time period, first off, there's probably a 90% chance that it would have been blue death, meaning it would have just been a fucking
chalk
boop. That's it. And second, I don't know, even today, if
it was moving,
if an aircraft went wings level and they're like, the fucking target's moving, I don't know if they would drop. Because it's not something that they would see on that type of range. So I think they would call it off.
Okay.
So yeah.
So when 4 Abrams are out moving into combat or possible combat, how far out is all the logistical stuff? 5 miles, 10 miles?
It's way far away. It's not close.
Do they basically have everything on board those wreckers and all that shit to rebuild everything that would go wrong on those tanks?
No, they got you have to look at it as they'll have support commonality of problems like for example the Toyota. We'll just use the Toyota as an example. Toyota knows that at 5,000 miles these are the parts that possibly will break. At 10,000 miles, these are the parts that will possibly break. It's not a total overhaul that you have to do. You just need to know that these are the parts. So they'll have those things on the truck.
When you buy
as far as on the tank, most of the stuff that's on the tank is everything to keep the treads working. They have
what
other
am
shit.
I feeling?
I don't know. Earthquake?
Vibrating like a helicopter.
Tank coming. Did you get me are you bringing those chieftains here? Holy shit! Christmas come early.
So, when you buy the Chieftain tank, is there a fucking logbook in there?
There's a manual.
This is the last maintenance we did.
No, not those vehicles there. No, those vehicles there are just come as you are. Now, the reality is, because it's a foreign vehicle. So because it's a foreign vehicle, it'd be different if it was 2 M60 tanks. If it was 2,
would you rather have M60s?
Oh yeah, fuck yeah, than the Chief. Yeah, because the M60s, it's roomier, it's more user friendly, it's more 18-year-old friendly. The M60s would be way better.
Did you see the thing? I know that dude that I forwarded you from Facebook the other day that just bought another tank. Did you see that? Did you read that post? He's out in Las Vegas. and he just bought a couple of more tanks. They just took delivery of. They just took them off of the train.
Oh, wait. You're talking about the Merkavas.
Cheney, not Phil, different dude.
Yeah, you're talking about the Merkavas. I thought those were still over in Europe.
No, they're in Las Vegas.
That's badass. I mean, that's badass that he was able to get them in the country. Those are definitely interesting tanks.
Is getting M60s a possibility?
Yeah, there are a few out there. Still, yeah.
That change hands?
That change hands that are for sale. Yeah, it's still a possibility to get M60, but I mean,
less costly than those.
No,
Chieftains?
I mean, everything's when you look at that time period. So the Chieftain M60, you're still 300,000. You're making a house payment.
But for $300,000, you're getting a functioning, running with fucking supplies and extras.
For the most part, usually when you get to that level, there's a bit of a log train that comes with it.
Like for $300,000, I get to keep the train car it came on.
For example, even this Chieftain deal that just went down, what they were really selling was one working tank, one parts tank.
When I read it, now I just caught that video, but I saw the posting 3 or 4 weeks earlier on a marketplace.
Yeah, I saw it too.
And it said one running tank, basically, one parts tank plus a third motor.
Yeah, probably. Usually guys, when they get into that level, it's kind of rare that you're going to buy just the vehicle. There's usually, even like, for example, if an M151 military Jeep from the 80s and 90s. Usually if you find somebody that's going to sell one of those things, there's a fucking garage full of SL3 and he's got an extra motor, because it's just part of that. It's part of that collection, right? So it'd be very rare, I think, for you to buy an armored vehicle of any type, unless it's from a paintball park, where they're not going to be like, we got all this other shit too. So you're going to have other things. Now, for those Chieftains, probably the best thing to do, again, because like they're talking about, they have the one that has the blown motor. If in fact I had guys, right? If I had guys that were capable, I would do what the guys up in Minnesota have done, and that one that has the blown motor, I'd pull that motor, throw it in the fucking scrap pile, and put a Caterpillar engine in it, because parts availability.
Just a normal Caterpillar.
Normal heavy D Caterpillar engine in it, because you don't need the same specifications that they were running. Like, even the reality is, even if I could get
at that point, it just runs normal ass diesel.
Yeah, it runs normal ass diesel,
which the Chieftain probably does.
It probably doesn't go fucking. It's not going to go probably the same max speed. I don't know. That could just really have to do with gearbox. But a lot of the guys that bring in Russian vehicles, Russian tanks and stuff, that's the first thing they do, is they tear those power packs out, put in a Caterpillar power pack and drivetrain, because it's maintainable. Where you don't have to fucking source some weird ass part out of Russia.
So if you read the comments in that video, 100 of the comments in there were, you need this guy, you need this guy, you need this guy. He was the dude. The guy they keep tagging was the dude that went out there and got him running the first time, apparently. Yeah. And he's here in the States. His whole channel is tanks.
Yeah, there's dudes. There are dudes that.
So if we have a dude that can work on a tank, can he basically work on any tank?
That's not necessarily true.
If not, that's a question.
That's not necessarily true. Like you're not going to get like a, let's just say, fucking a crew of M1 Abrams guys and then throw them on a fucking Russian tank and then be like, this is exactly. They're going to know like 99% of operational capability and what you need to do to keep it running and shit like that. But
YouTube's going to have the rest.
You need a guy a fucking tank nerd that really knows the ins and outs. But usually when you see I
feel like those guys are there, and I feel feel like most tank nerds don't have their own tank.
They're there. There's a ton of them there, really. I mean, there's a lot of people that, like me. I have never been in an M1 Abrams while it was moving. I've never had to crew an M1 Abrams, and I would love a fucking M1 Abrams tank. And the crazy part is, I know people that, like, I had one of my Marines didn't cross stick, but he ended up being in charge of a platoon of tanks at 29 Palms, and he's like, fucking pieces of shit. They're always they're always in the maintenance bay. They're always, it's a cost expenditure. Like, he hated them. I don't care. I still want one.
We had an M1 Abrams guy come in the shop, had us make a chest holster for him. He's like, oh yeah, you want to ride an M1 Abrams? I'll get you out there. We'll take a ride in the... And I never did take him up on it. I just know that you have a huge interest in it. I know I watched the video, so I just had some questions
just
about
fucking armor is so... It's so... Because again, even like an M60 tank. M60 tank, you know, the reality is the last time it was used by U.S. forces was the Marine Corps, and that was the first Gulf War.
I don't think people ever realize, and they don't realize, like, you see a Ferrari going down the road, you're like, oh, that guy's got money. And I'm always like, that ain't the dude with the money. The dude with the money is the dude with the fucking 12 fucking combines sitting there that aren't moving but fucking 30 days out of the year. That's the dude with the money.
That is the dude
and
with
that's
the money.
Like, that's the fucking armor
Jack Garland.
shit. Like tanks.
Yeah.
Like, that's where the money's at. You have no idea what it took to fucking get that tank here.
If you can afford to buy an armored vehicle, and you can afford to run it around, and here's the thing, I'll bet you all the guys that have those vehicles will tell you that they're not rich, but yeah, that's because it's like it's like a boat. It's completely expendable money. There's no functionality of a fucking tank,
and it's not making
to regular
money.
Joes.
Yeah.
And, unless you do tank rides. But again, there's no functionality.
If we had a tank here, it would tear this fucking place up so bad.
Yeah, but basically what it would be was you do the same thing we did back in the day with the razors. You just make a loop that people would drive around, and then every now and then you'd fire a blank.
So that Chieftain, does it have a gun in it? There's no gun in there.
It'll have a gun.
The breech isn't there or whatever.
The breech block will be missing. And sometimes the breech block will be missing, and then you know how you see that when you look at a tank barrel, there's like a double sleeve. There's like the spot that looks like it has a muffler on it.
Yeah.
That's the bore evacuator that pushes the gas out of the vehicle. And sometimes they'll put a hole in that, but usually just the breech block being gone is enough. But you never know. You never know what crazy rules the ATF is going to have.
And then in the future, somebody could make a breech block for that. Is that a doable thing? It's just a big giant chunk of metal. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a functionality big giant chunk of metal. In theory, you could. There's dudes out there driving around fully functional tanks, but the issue, you run into a couple issues. First off, the breech block is an NSA item. Or NSF, whatever
it's
the fuck.
It's a numbered item.
It's a numbered item so you can get one registered and put in there. You could have, in theory, you could have one built and put in there, and then it would be a fucking NFA tax stamped item. But then your issue is ammo. Where do you find ammo for it? There's not just you can't just go on to fucking, gun brokers and find fucking 155 millimeter rounds or whatever that cannon is. It's probably 120 maybe, or no, I bet it's still 105. I don't know. But you just can't find ammo for it because again, anything bigger than 50 cal is regulated. So now you're talking about a destructive tax stamp on every single one of those. Also, you're talking about a round that you're going to have
right, the
manufactured for you.
Not to mention where you could actually
where you can shoot it. There's guys. There's a dude in Texas. There's
drive tank.
Drive tank. They have tanks that shoot. They have that fucking 120 millimeter Russian artillery piece that they let people shoot. So you can do it. It's just again, deep pockets. You got to have deep pockets. Again, I say I would love to have an M1 Abrams, but until that motherfucker's sitting on a piece of property that I own, and I'm like, how many fucking gas cans did we just, what? What do you mean? That shit gets expensive.
You gotta have a fuel truck to go with it.
Even that, like I think of an M1 Abrams, and if money wasn't an option, not that money wouldn't be an option, but if money was not the thing, I would go right down in here to fucking the cat place and be like, hey, what power pack can we fit in? What power pack can we fit in there to get that? Because again, I don't need to go 45 miles an hour across rough terrain. I just need to.
Their power pack's not going to just bolt up either. You're going to have to.
No, yeah, you're going to have. That's yeah. It would be a big deal. But again, in the long run, now all I need is a fucking cat tractor guy in order to figure out why the thing isn't working.
Have that
versus me finding some fucking Lance Corporal from the 90s that remembers how to put the fucking.
No, we've got the Caterpillar guy. They've been here. Remember they came.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I would use those guys.
How do you move a tank when it's broken?
With another tank.
That's really the only way. They don't have. There's not a wrecker that'll move it.
Well, that's it's a tank wrecker. So they have a tank wrecker that recovers and moves those vehicles, and then it goes on a flatbed, and then that really cool huge fucking semi truck that has like 90 wheels pulls it to wherever it needs to be fixed.
So when we accidentally...
At that point, the reality is at that point it just becomes lawn sculpture, and I'll hook batteries up to it so we can turn the turret and shit and raise the thing, but that's about it.
So when we drop it in the pond by accident, we can't just call Jack and he'll just come and pick it up with his excavator?
His big excavator might be able to pull it. I think maybe, yeah. I'll bet that big excavator because he has a.
Well, that makes things a lot simpler.
No, it doesn't. I've been trying to get Jack's excavator over the place to take out trees for almost a year and a half now.
It's weird. Every time I call him, he just shows up.
Why don't you call him and tell him that you're over at my place?
Well, when I call him, I usually have $150,000 worth of shit sinking into a mud hole.
So is that what I got to do? You know what? Hey, I got it.
You tell him you got a tank here. You'll show up.
He might show up.
He showed up just when you thought you were shooting a 50.
He might show up. I don't know. So.
All right. Well, guys.
That's it.
Pulling the Thread Podcast, episode 101. While we were filming this podcast.
Hey, I thought this was 100.
We just received... 100. We just received another channel strike. So we, again, are locked. So... if you're seeing this, it's because we have posted it on Rumble or onto Patreon. Our YouTube page is again locked, probably longer this time. We are not clear. I've been doing lives on Instagram and Facebook at 9 o'clock. They definitely do not have the reach that YouTube has. So we're going to do a live. We'll tell everybody about it here in a few minutes. We're going to record the Patreon Q&A, and I think there's another channel being set up for YouTube, something different, but we'll be able to post there also. So when you're seeing this, look for them. I'm sure by the time you see this, that information will be out there. And make sure you follow soetacticalgear.com. Make sure you join our email and our text app, and all the information will be in those from here forward. We will talk to you guys next week.
From the bottom, they throw it